You're listening to the Service Business Mastery Podcast. I'm your host, Tersh Blissett. I haven't had to say that in a little while. Today's episode, we have the pleasure of speaking with Stephen Bostic. Stephen has a relatively new company to our industry. It's not a new company in general, but he discovered how much it would be beneficial to the service industry. And so he and I have spoken a couple of times, and the last time we spoke, I asked him if it was okay if we recorded it so that I could share all of his information with you also. Stephen and I were introduced to each other by Patrick Long. Patrick is a profit coach. He's a business coach for service-based businesses. If you haven't ever met Patrick Long, he's on Facebook. Reach out to him. He's a great guy. Won't be long. I'll have him on the podcast also. But without further ado, I'd like to introduce to you Stephen Bostic. Steve.
Yes.
It's nice to get you going here. I appreciate you coming on the podcast and telling us all about your product.
You know what? I appreciate being here. Thanks for having me.
That's my pleasure. So tell us what you have. It's great. So Brandon and I talked about it. You and I have spoken in the past about it. Patrick raves about it. And once everybody else hears about it, I'm sure they'll feel the same way. But let's hear what it is.
Well, first of all, Tersh, if you'd have told me 2 months ago that I was going to be on an HVAC home contractor podcast, I'd have bet that's long odds, right? Because that's just not the world that I'm in every day. Right. So you just never know what, the way things are going to work out. We've got a mobile app that is a cash back app that pays consumers an average of 5.7% every time they use it in stores. It's not exactly like Apple Pay. A lot of people compare it to that, but it's a little bit different. But the premise is the same. So when you're in Kohl's or Home Depot or Lowe's, CVS, the big retailers, Best Buy, or all the big restaurant chains, you use the app for payment, and you're going to get 5.7% on average every time you use it. So it's a game changer. Now, the catch is it's not open to the public, so it's a reward application.
In our industry, the best thing for it to be used for would be us to get the product and give it to our customer on, say, if they buy a system or if they are on a maintenance agreement with us.
Right. So just to give people just a real brief background so that the context, so that they know how this all came about. Our main business is primarily we help charities raise money. And if somebody, let's say, donates to Make-A-Wish or Leukemia and Lymphoma or any other big charity that we deal with, which is a lot of them, they would get access to this special app that gives them special pricing everywhere they go, pretty much 262 major retailers and restaurants, airlines, hotels, etc. And then at the end of the year, if they want to keep getting all this extra cash, they have to make another donation, at least $20. And so during the course of that, we were approached by people from different businesses who had used the app because they gave to a charity or nonprofit or school. And they said, hey, listen, I love this app. I'm getting cash everywhere. Is there any way I can use this for my business? And that's how the HVAC home contractor thing started. We had a discussion one day with a gentleman who called in and said, I've been using this thing. I'm looking for something that I can give my customers that would really sort of justify my service agreements. And that was foreign to me, right? I mean, I got what he was saying, but it had never crossed my mind that our app could be used like that. So I did some checking around and didn't want to say no to the gentleman, and he convinced me, let's give this a go, because I think HVAC is a wonderful place for you guys to use your app, because we're all looking to reward and engage our customers, and this seems to suit or fit the bill.
Well, not only that, it sets you apart from any of the other competitors, because in our industry, everybody says they're honest, they're on time, they're going to send clean techs, everybody drug tests. We're the best in the industry. We're the best in our area. But this actually is just one of those things that would help set us apart from any of the competition.
Exactly. I think that's a good point. I mean, we call that like is a ubiquitous business, right? And that's most businesses today. I mean, you're not going to find too many businesses. Maybe Amazon's an example of somebody that just dominates a business, but overall, most of us have to fight and scratch and claw for everything we get. And,
Exactly.
an application like this can really set you apart. And plus, we've got HVAC folks and plumbers and pest control companies, for example, who are going into people's homes today and saying, look, I am going to give you the best service and just what you just said, but I'm also going to help you pay for it. Do you shop at Kohl's? Do you shop at Home Depot, Lowe's, CVS, Chipotle, et cetera? And if you do, I can get you cash back that's not available to the public. I can get you that cash back. And I really believe there's a good chance, potentially you can pay for my service.
That's what I was getting ready to say. So if we charge, say, $12 a month for a maintenance agreement,
right?
What's the chances of the customer earning that amount of money back?
The average customer today for us earns somewhere between $8 and $10 a month. And so that's average. Now, if somebody books a Carnival cruise or a Royal Caribbean cruise or whatever, they're going to make your service agreement back in one, because we pay 6%, for example, on cruises. They're going to make that back in one transaction. So we have what we call like casual users of the application. And we have these power users that they might make $300-400 or more in a year on the application. But let's say it is the average is $8 and your service agreement costs $12.99. Well, you just help pay for a large part of your service agreement, which that's a great thing.
Yeah, I agree. 100%.
I mean, just because they don't pay for the whole thing doesn't mean it doesn't add value to the business and to the client.
With that app, will they see our brand every time they use it, or is there anything like that? Okay.
Yeah, so that's a great question, Tersh, and I should have brought that up. Our application is all about private branding. In fact, we have a new update to the app coming out in 2 weeks. It's going to look spectacular. So every time your client would open an app, let's say they're going to make a payment in Best Buy or Kohl's or Home Depot, they're going to see your branding. They're going to see XYZ plumbing company or HVAC, and they're going to be constantly reminded that this is a company that I use for my systems in the home, but at the same time, they're helping me and rewarding me for being their client. It's a great two-way relationship. And plus, it really engages the client. You want to stay top of mind if you can, and it's really hard to do for any business, not just for home service businesses.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that top of mind is the biggest thing. And in our industry, I feel like most of the times what we've done in the past is send out postcards monthly, which wind up in the trash can, or send out an email blast, but then it becomes spammy, or it could become spammy. And if they are using this app, then they're welcoming you into becoming their top of mind.
No question about it. I think if you talk to people in companies that do HR, their number one job is to try to engage their employees. That's like the big buzzword. And if you're in any kind of business today, you're really trying to engage your client or your customer, but it's really hard to do. Right. And as it turns out, our application, which honestly wasn't created for home service or HVAC or some of the other areas that we're in now, but gosh, I think it's a pretty good fit.
Definitely. Because a lot of guys in our industry will have a rewards-based program set up for their maintenance agreement customers, but it usually has to be managed in-house. They have to make sure that they are marking whether the gold, silver, or a platinum plan. So they have to track it in-house. But offering something like this is almost like a set it and forget it type thing.
Absolutely it is. Yes.
Would you have the ability to turn it off after a year? I remember you said that about the charity program. So in order for them to renew it, they had to turn it, or they had to pay that $20 or whatever it was. Do you have the ability to set it up so it's the same way with the service business companies?
Definitely. And we're also coming up with an easier way for it to be affordable for just about anybody. So let's say you give it to a client and the client is using the heck out of it. And that's a great thing for you because you're engaging the client and you can actually see if they're using it. We give you reports that say, okay, the customer Bill here is using the app and he's got $67 in cash back in 3 months. Well, that's a pretty good sign he's going to stay your customer. But let's say maybe mobile apps, maybe one of your customers is 75 or 80 years old. And we all have those customers as well. And they're great customers, but a mobile app that they're going to use to pay in stores may not be the best thing for them. And if you did offer it to them and they weren't using it, well, we can fix that. It's one of those things where you can try, but
you can figure
because
out if they're using
you shouldn't pay for somebody you're not using, that's not engaged with you, right?
Right.
And that's one of the cool things about it. You get total insight into who's using it and how much, and so you know. And I think that's one of the strengths of the thing too. And that way, we always tell people, why pay for somebody? Now, listen, I have an HVAC guy, and he tells me he's going to keep it in full force for every one of his service agreement customers. And I've had this debate with him, and he says, if they get a service agreement from me, I'm paying for this, and I don't care if they're using it or not. Mm-hmm. And I said, well, that's fine, but I personally, you could always give it back to them if they found out about it, they weren't using it. And then, So anyway, we've been having that, and I understand his position, but he's trying to treat all his customers the same, and that's nice.
Yeah, I get that.
Oh, in fact, he sent me some recordings. He's actually going on the radio now and saying things like, hey, I'm going to give you the best service you've ever had in this town, in Mobile, Alabama, and I am going to help you pay for it with my reward program inside every major retailer that you can want to shop at. And so he's putting that out on the radio, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah, that is cool. You can tell he stands behind it if he's going to put it out there on the radio like that.
Definitely. And he also sees it as a way for competitive differentiation. And he wants to get a jump in the market, and he wants to be known as the guy that's going to help you pay for his service agreements, which not everybody is kind of a forward thinker like that, but I give him credit. He's taken it and really run with it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. There's some programs that I've seen advertised that their program's free, and basically they just build the cost of whatever their program is back into what you're selling to the customer. So in the end, it doesn't cost you a whole lot of money, but you have to pay for the money up front. So it's basically about the same thing.
Right. We talked to a gentleman this week who is doing something really interesting along those lines that you just said, Tersh, and that is he is going to be compensating his service techs. He feels like now that they have this tool that they can use in the home, they can potentially get more service agreements. Mm-hmm. And he's actually going to be charging $50 more for his service agreement. And he is going to give half of that extra money to the tech and pay them on that service agreement in perpetuity, because he wants to reward his techs, and he wants over time for them to have these people that are just, they're happy with the service, yes, but they're also getting cash back where they go, and that locks them in. And the service tech who sold them that service agreement in the home will keep that client going forward. And so it hopefully over time they'll build up a number of, I thought that was a very innovative way to use it. So A, he's bumping his agreement by $50, and B, the service tech is getting 25 of that, which I thought was pretty interesting.
Yeah, in our industry, we do have a lot of spiff programs typically. So your service tech would get $5 or $10 for a maintenance agreement sale. But to pay them $25 to get a maintenance agreement, that's a hefty spiff for a maintenance agreement.
So that's considered a hefty spiff?
It really is, because typically I would say, especially in our area, about $10 is about average for a maintenance. And then if they renew it, it's $5.
Okay.
Typically is something in that neighborhood. So $25 is really good.
Well, he said that he's got great service techs for the most part. He's in a very competitive market. And he said, look, I want these guys to have something like this. It sounds like he's one of these people that really thinks a lot of his techs and wants to keep them and keep them happy. And that's good to know, because I really didn't know how that compared to some of the others.
Yeah, no, that's really good. Now, their market's probably pretty similar to ours, but if you went to a market, say like in California or the Northeast.
He's in the Northeast.
Oh, he's in the Northeast. Okay. I was thinking that was the guy in Alabama.
This guy's in Boston.
Yeah, it may be kind of average up there because their pay is a little bit more up there because the cost of living is a little higher up there.
That's true, which is why I don't live up there. No offense, but
that's shoveling snow.
That's true. Yeah. I'm too old to shovel snow.
Yeah, I am too. I was too old whenever I was 15.
Exactly. Yeah, that's never any fun. If you're going to work, you want to get paid for it.
Absolutely. How does it work? How does a company get the program? Are they tickets, or is it just a click on an app, or do you pay by how many times you sell it?
Here's how it works. Typically, the way it's executed, it's done several different ways. So we just mentioned the service techs in the home, and then it's also executed. We've got somebody else who has had their CSRs, or they're calling on the phone ahead of the service agreement to schedule it, and they're talking about it on the phone, and then the technician is just delivering what amounts to it's like a plastic card with the information on it. There's a unique code on that card and a unique website landing page where they go to register that code. And that code also alerts us, who makes the app, to populate that with all the private labeling of that particular home service business. So they put that, the customer downloads the app, enters into a code, it populates with all of that particular home service company. And then next time they're out in Home Depot, Lowe's, Kohl's, wherever you're going, out to eat at Chili's or Longhorn, or booking a flight on Delta and American or Southwest, for example, you use that app and you're going to get instant cash back. And it averages 7%, or 5.7%. And the reason why I say average is some of the retailers we've got deals with that, like say Home Depot's 3%, and Kohl's is 3%. And others, almost all the restaurants are 6%. And then we've got really great retailers like, say, Belk, that's 9%, or Nike, that's 9%. And so last month we paid out something like an average 5.68% or something like that. So that's what an average transaction is going to do for somebody. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. So when you're talking about the transaction, it kind of leads me into a question that I'm sure that other people will have, is how secure is it? If you're going to basically put your credit card or debit card information into the app and then you pay for everything with this app, how are we to reassure the customer that the system's not going to get hacked or anything like that?
That's a great question. So we're PCI level 1 compliant, which is the highest standard in the industry, but also we have protection against identity theft, and we verify every customer that comes in. We have two-factor authentication, so we know that that cell phone is you, that you're registering with, to be your payment mechanism primarily. We send a code to that, so we verify that that's you. And honestly, as far as all credit card information, anything like that isn't even stored at our company. We store that off-site. The digital currency that people pay with at the point of sale, that's stored at the retail level. So we go into their back end, grab it, and deliver it down to the phone in seconds. So we're almost like a virtual hub where nothing is really stored where we are, which helps us sleep better at night.
Yeah, absolutely.
But that's a great question, and it's one that's often asked, and especially in these times when you hear about Russians and people like that.
Hacked down. But the problem, you hear of like Wells Fargo or somebody like that getting hacked, Sony getting hacked, and that sends fear to everybody. But we use little small local banks here in town for all of our banking needs. They're just as probably easy to get hacked as a large company, even maybe easier.
I think the banks are typically pretty secure because that's what they have to be. I think the retailers, like remember the Target getting hacked a while back, and Michael's and so on. I mean, one of the problems that retailers typically, I've been told, and I'm not a technology expert by any means, but I think they've got servers that are generally pretty old. And because they're working great, and it's extremely expensive. It impacts the customer at the checkout and everything else. So it's a real pain for retailers to come on board with the newest and latest and the greatest. But unfortunately, those are also the most targeted, or so I'm told. So I think that's one of the reasons. The banks are pretty up to standard.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's way out of my forte. I don't know anything about that finance stuff. But
I think that the home service business, and at the end of the day, it may not be for everybody. I would say that it's probably for anybody who really wants to set their business apart and wants to engage and reward a customer. And I think that the thing, when people see the retailers on the platform, Tersh, I really believe that's what sets us apart, because no offense to the local businesses, there's a lot of great ones out there, But when people see Kohl's and Home Depot and Lowe's and CVS and Best Buy and Chipotle and all them, that really adds credibility to the platform and to the home service provider, because
Absolutely.
what you're giving them is something that it's got sort of a wow factor to it. We always hear, how did you get those? I mean, you and I talked before. I mean, one of the people that I leaned on early on when we first got into HVAC was a gentleman named Ron Smith.
Oh, yeah. I don't know if anybody's ever heard of that guy.
Apparently, he wrote the book on HVAC, right?
Yeah.
I went out and I wanted to run it, what we were doing by Ron, because I figured he'd have some feedback for me on whether or not we should be going into this vertical market. And he was very nice, and he agreed to have lunch with me at Longhorn. And I wanted to take him to a place where I could pay and get cash back so I could show him how it worked. He was saying, when I look at all these retailers, I wanted to do something like this, like back in the 80s. I had these ideas, but I could never get all the big boys on board. There wasn't a way to do it. And when I see all these retailers, these are the ones that, to me, lend credibility to the platform. So he agreed to help us out and to make some calls, because he said, look, I want HVAC to thrive. And
Absolutely.
to me, this is the kind of application that I'd like to see all of us using. So he's been very helpful and very nice, as I mentioned to you.
That's great. I'm so happy that Ron Smith was on board with that. The worst thing about the service industry, I feel like, is we are so behind on certain things. And this app really brings us to the next level. It brings us to the future and puts us on par with other industries. So we're not 30 years behind everybody else.
I don't think you are 30 years behind everybody else. I think, the funny thing is, everybody that I talk to, like in different markets, they always say, well, our industry is lagging behind, and that's why we want this. And if everybody's lagging behind, I don't think anybody's really lagging behind. But I hear what you're saying, and I think there has to be this progression to kind of new and cool things in every vertical market. I mean, really successful people in any business are always looking for ways to get an edge and to really distinguish themselves from their competitors. And as we know, that's hard to do sometimes, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
And I think that's what, when a lot of people see this app, fortunately, that's what they've thought. And then the next question is, hey, can I get an exclusive for my market? Because I don't want my competition getting this. And that's always
once
the next.
Once they catch wind of it, it's going to be hot.
Or can you at least give me like a 3-month head start, because I want to get the word out about this. And I want to be known as the person that's offering the potential to pay for your service agreements. And I mean, we take that as kind of a compliment that they think enough of it to want to get a head start on it.
Absolutely. So if a owner is looking at, if they're listening to this and they want to learn more about it, where do I send them? What's the best way to get in contact with you?
We've got a landing page set up for people that want to discuss it or get more information. It's www.shoppingboss. It's the word shopping and then BOSS. .wix.com, and it's /HVAC. So it's www.shoppingboss.wix.com /HVAC. I apologize for the long address, but that's a place they can go. And if they want to get more information, we're happy to talk to them. And
yeah, they can put their phone number or email address in there and you'll reach out to them.
Exactly. At the end of the day, if anybody's looking to distinguish themselves and maybe reward a customer or engage a customer and cost justify their service, I think this could be a real benefit to them. Of course, it only works if people implement it. It's only as good as if somebody gets it and decides to, well, I'll do it next week. Well, it didn't do you any good. Fortunately, everybody that we talked to here lately has just been going gangbusters with it and trying to get it out to all their customers.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I say, trash in, trash out. And if you implement crap or you don't implement the right things, then you're not going to get the best results out of anything.
There's no doubt about it. It was a lot of fun for me to come on here today. And like I said, if you'd have told me 2 months ago that I was going to be on an HVAC podcast with you, I'd have told you were nuts.
Well, we'll have to thank Patrick Long for that. He reached out to me and got us connected together.
Yeah, he's been real instrumental in connecting us to a lot of different people. Patrick's a great up and coming guy, man. He is a hustler. And when he got onto this, he thought the same thing that you and I did. Man, we needed something like this in our business, and I want to help spread the word. And he's not getting a nickel from this. He just thinks a lot of the business, and he wants to help anybody in the business.
Yeah, I feel like he's a lot like Ron, too. He really wants our industry to succeed and everything.
He's a young Ron.
Exactly.
Although Ron is up there, but I'm telling you what, you wouldn't want to go toe-to-toe with him. He'll outwork anybody to this day. There's no chance that he's not going to. He told me, he said, look, I may be up there in years, but I guarantee you, even now, I can outwork anybody. And believe me, after spending some time with him, I believe him.
Oh, yeah. Steve, I appreciate it. And I'm definitely going to have to check out the program, try it out. And then we'll have to get you back on here for some feedback. I'm sure people have some more questions about it and everything. If anybody does have questions and you're listening to this, feel free to reach out to Steve, or you can ask questions in the Facebook group. If you're not a member of the Facebook group, join Service Business Mastery Podcast in the group section. Facebook's made it a little tricky right now to get into it, but click join group and we'll add you, and feel free to ask any questions you want to in that group, and we will answer. Steve's in that group, so he can answer any questions that you might have.
Yeah, it'd be an honor to. Man, I've gotten to meet a lot of great people since I've entered into the HVAC space. I mean, it's been a lot of fun so far. I'm looking forward to the rest of 2018 because it seems like there's exciting times ahead for all of us. Absolutely.
Well, hey, again, I appreciate it, and I will reach out to you in the near future.
It's all my pleasure, Tersh. Thanks again for having me.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Bye-bye.